And welcome back to the OperaWire podcast. I'm Francisco Salazar, co-host. And this episode, we're going to change things up a little bit. Today, I am joined by Afton Markay, who's co-hosting with me. And we have a very special interview with Katy Salomon of Primo Artists. How are you, Afton?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Very excited for this episode. And let's get
Okay.
things started and tell me and introduce our guest.
All right. So we are here with Katy Salomon. She is the VP of Primo Artists, like Prin said. Um, she is a Grammy specialist, which is the prop for this interview. She has run campaigns for Karen Slack, who won a Grammy at Opera, as well as International Contemporary Ensemble, Philadelphia Orchestra, and more. She also represents Will Liverman, and she's worked with composers like Julia Wolf. And she has also been a guest lecturer at Opera America and other conferences and schools. So we are really excited to have her.
So welcome to the show, Katy. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks. We're all experiencing a snowstorm, so I'm glad everyone's warm and safe. I'm well. Hope y'all are too.
Yes. So, I guess we're going to start by asking, how did you like get involved with Grammy campaigning?
Yeah, sure. Albums have always been a love of mine because unlike a concert where you're doing PR and it's leading up and it happens and it's over, albums can kind of take on a life of their own forever. They last and they are kind of evergreen, and they also aren't specific to a certain territory. So albums can be listened to by anyone all over the world. So I really love them. Um, and in 2020, when classical musicians had nothing else to do, they became a particular specialty because everyone started releasing albums when they had nowhere to perform. And I would say that's really where I dug in my heels on albums specifically. I began working with Deutsche Grammophon and Decca as their classical music publicist in 2021. And it's just kind of gone up from there. I launched the PR division of Primo Artists in 2022, May 2022. So we're just getting on 4 years. And starting in 2022 was really where we started doing a lot of Grammy campaigning. We work with the Sphinx organization, and I was at the Sphinx competition and conference in Detroit. And I was in line after the competition with Janina Norpoth of the Public Quartet. And she was like, I have this extra Grammy ticket and I can't go. Or my mom can't go. Do you want to come? And it was like the following weekend. So I figured it out really quick. I booked flights and I was able to go. And that was my first in person Grammys. It was very exciting, and I was more like an audience member and just got to experience the atmosphere. And then every year since then, I've attended with media credentials, which means I get to go behind the scenes. I get to go on the red carpet and help our artists through the process from beginning to end and have like an insider knowledge, like the media that's going to be on the red carpet, what the carpet's going to look like ahead of time, what the program of the ceremony, the order of the program, we get that in advance so people know when they need to be in their seats, and those sorts of things. And then that kind of goes into campaigning, so helping our artists know how to try to secure a nomination. And then so that's the first round, and then the second round is securing a win, which nobody knows. And not even a label asked me this the other week. They were like, "So we would know if we won already?" And no, it's like I think it's Deloitte, like a official. Like nobody knows until the envelope is
Mhm.
open on the stage. Um, so yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it, and have gotten more and more involved over the last 4 years.
Nice. Um, so could you talk? more about how, like, you have this album or you have an artist. How do you get to the Grammy nomination? Can you walk us through like that first step?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, an interesting thing about the Grammys, it's kind of like a US focus. Like people don't really care as much about it outside of the US. But obviously everyone around the world can campaign if they would like to. If you have had 13, I believe it is, recording credits within the last 5 years, or if you've received a nomination, you can be a member of the Recording Academy. A nomination waives all of the recording credit requirements. And if you haven't been nominated, you need the Academy requirements and then 2 nominations by your peers. There's also a separate section of Recording Academy members, which are professional members. So I'm a professional Recording Academy member, which means that I can nominate new members, but I cannot vote. I don't get the ballot, unfortunately, which I really appreciate. We've had this past year, we had 7 nominees on our PR roster. The year before, 10 nominees. And often they are competing in the same category. So I'm kind of glad that I'm not a voting member because then no one's gonna try to get me to vote. And I'm like, I can't vote. So like it's like your children. Like I would never want to vote between them or pick one over the other. So voting members, which are active recording artists, get that ballot. So what I usually tell people, because sometimes an album hasn't even been recorded and they're like, the goal of this project is a Grammy. Like from before it even starts, that's
I've heard that from some artists in interviews before, and I'm like, how does that even happen? How do you have that mindset going into making this album?
yeah, that's often the case. And it's a tall order. Because first and foremost, it's a popularity contest. So usually we work in earned media, so reviews that we do not pay for. But 99% of the Recording Academy voters are not journalists. Journalists are not typically recording artists, so they are not voting members. So when someone says I have this recording project, I want a Grammy, I say it's 2 separate beasts. First is reviews and features and editorial coverage, and then the second bucket is your peers. So one thing that was really interesting 2 cycles ago when we had 10 nominees, I noticed that they were all kind of released in spring. So April, May time. Um, so every year the Grammys, it's September to September, approximately. They can shift every year. So the eligibility period is September to September. However, you think about psychology, which is a lot of what I do. If you release your album in October of the following year, and then you're asking people to vote for it in October of the next year, it's really hard to have your album be top of mind. So we saw a lot of success with albums that were out in April, May, June, because then you've hit that arc and then you're still kind of on the tail end of that awareness when in the early voting period, which is early October typically. So the first step really is to decide when you're releasing your album and decide these milestones. As a publicist, we love when people have like live performances of the music, they have videos, but that's usually not the case. Usually people record it after they tour it and then they're like sick of it. And so there aren't any live performances. So we work with what we have, but we've seen a big success with Spring. I'll give an example of one of our nominees this past cycle was Huang Ro and David Henry Huang's An American Soldier. American Composers Orchestra was the producer and orchestra behind this recording. They performed the New York premiere at Perlman Arts Center in 2024, and they said, we want this to have a Grammy. When should it come out, and what do we do? ACO is turning 50 in 2027.
Wow.
And they've never been nominated for a Grammy in 50 years. So I was like, cool. And all like the plan was we're gonna release it. And so we decided on May. according to this logic. And it was also the birthday of the subject matter, which was a soldier, and it was also Memorial Day. So there were a lot of themes that we took into consideration with release day. And then we do the PR campaign, so as many reviews and interviews, radio interviews as possible. And then about August time, we start re-upping the awareness of the album by social media campaigns and grassroots outreach. So Grammys, like I said, are a totally different pool of people. These are your peers. So each individual artist involved in the production. So Huang Ro, he's obviously very well connected within his peers and other composers, conductors of his music, other orchestras and opera companies that are performing his music. He needed to tap into every single possibility of people that could be a Recording Academy voting member. Same with David, the librettist, the ACO. They have a wide network of composers, the people that they've recently commissioned. We work with the artistic director of American Composers Orchestra, which is Curtis Stewart. He's been nominated 7 times, including this last cycle. He's also in the public quartet that brought me my first Grammys, and his network. Each singer, Brian Vu was the tenor, was the lead soloist. His network, everyone that he knows who could possibly, so it involves everyone engaging their concentric circles and requesting a vote in that first nomination period, which is usually 2 weeks in early October. The Recording Academy does impose very strict rules.
Right.
You cannot make a personal plea. You cannot say, please vote for me. You cannot overstate the merit of an album and say this is the best opera that's ever been written in the history of opera. You cannot you cannot bulk, you cannot say vote trade. You can say I'll vote for me if you vote, if I'll vote for you if you vote for me. There cannot be any like voting blocks officially, like everyone on this label vote for this. So it's also a lot of work making sure everyone follows the rules. And then during that 2-week campaign, everyone's doing their most to encourage votes. There's more psychology in like, are you the person that votes when the ballot arrives in your inbox, or are you the person that votes on the last day of voting? Have you decided all your votes before you even get the ballot? Are you an overachiever? So there's all these trying to hit all of those personality types within your circles of peers. And so the press coverage it got is kind of part of that, but it's an entirely different campaign. So that's kind of from beginning to end. I have seen a lot of people spend significant ad dollars on campaigning ads in outlets where many musicians read them. However, what I have seen is the people that are nominated and ultimately win are the people that have many, many concentric circles. So you mentioned Karen Slack. So I'm particularly proud of that win. Not only was she the first ever to win in Best Solo Vocal on a album of a Black composer in the history of the category, but it was also her first ever commercial album, believe it or not, which I'm like still surprised that was the case. But she has her career in so many buckets. She has the chamber music bucket touring with Pacifica and Moreau. She has the staged opera and all of her peers within traditional opera. She has her advocacy as an advisor and on the Portland Opera, and she's on the board of American Composers Orchestra. She is the mind behind the Blacknificent Seven. So she has like the composer world as well. So if you think about all of those potential voters, it's just, and it's easy to see why she won in addition to the quality of the recording. Same with like a Curtis Stewart. He's got the artistic directorship. He's a composer. He's a violinist. He's a chamber musician. Or someone like Seth Parker Woods, cellist Seth Parker Woods. He's in Wall Up. He's a chamber musician. He's a soloist. He works with composers. So that's kind of what we see to be the most success is people that have the most peer connections.
Let me ask you, because you that was a lot of information that's very interesting. But you know it's interesting, it feels a lot sometimes like even the Academy Awards, where there's like this recency bias, like you know that if anything that comes out from September to December is gonna be where your awards campaign is gonna be, and everything else that came in the rest of the years, like you know that has a much more difficult chance. So it's actually really interesting that I'd never heard that that's like the gear up, and I'm sure that it's different in terms of like pop music and whatnot because obviously it all depends on streams. It depends on how well the album performs. When it comes to classical music, it's an interesting thing. You talked about the campaigning. You talked about making sure that it's the social media ads. Do you ever feel like, or do you think that uh, like, if, for example, if there was an album that was really popular, like, that's had a lot of streaming ads, is there, like does that break the rule? Obviously, classical music is really different than, let's say, popular music.
Mm, I would say it's really just about your peer relationships in my experience. I've seen albums that honestly, like, the streaming was middle, you know, medium, and also I've seen albums that the press did not get it at all. Like, that got, like, sort of negative reviews, and then they got nominated for a Grammy, and then I've seen albums conversely that everyone reviewed it best of the year, and all the outlets rave reviews, and that didn't get nominated. So I'd say it's just 2 totally different markets, um, and so I would say those circles and how you campaign to your peers is just what it is for the Grammys. Speaking of, like, advertising, I've also heard, especially recently, that people can get the ick, if you campaign too hard, if you have too many ads, or it seems like you want it too bad and you're just like, everything is about the award, people can not vote for you because you're working too hard at it, and I
So are you in the background like kind of balancing those like strategies?
Yeah. Yeah, but most of the work for the campaigning does lie on the artist, because I can't, like, tell you who your, most likely circles are. I can help you brainstorm. I can tell you to make a spreadsheet because 'cause I'm the spreadsheet person versus, like, the on the page person, but, I can't actually do the campaigning for you in this case. I can buy ads, but like I said, I haven't seen often there's, like, a adverse reaction to campaigning super hard.
And it's interesting also with music and campaigning with music, because obviously, like I think with when you're campaigning like a film, I think there's a lot of screenings, there's a lot of parties and this and that. W- Besides social media, what are other avenues of campaigning for classical music?
Yeah, I would say the most important is individual peer-to-peer asks. So going to people that you know that are voting members is what really clinches it. But in terms of overall campaigning, artists have newsletter lists, like fan lists and lists of artists or conductors and fans that they have accumulated throughout their career. So like pretty like MailChimp or Constant Contact campaigns in addition to social media. And often we'll try to create a performance opportunity. So when Public Quartet, they had a really great video of the concert video of what was on the recording, and so we did a video release and got that video premiered by an outlet. And so kind of like a film screening, we got screenings of the live concert recording of the album because it had been quite a while since it had been released. So just coming up with creative ways if there aren't actual performances
Mhm.
of the music. Um, I have artists that are releasing albums later this year that are intentionally having their managers book tours of the recording material close to voting window and in specific markets. So like New York, LA, etc.
It's really cool. That kind of ties in to what Alan was saying on the last podcast about like it just being a really big communal experience. I think he was definitely talking about that more of like the costume designer and the composer and the performers and everybody are there together. But that's interesting to see like the background, like it has that like community aspect as well.
Yeah,
How do you go ahead?
No, go ahead.
Um, do you see that like within like the production team, like the orchestras and the conductor, composer, performers, all of that?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that so sometimes when we're working with an orchestra, so you're trying to get to a certain threshold of votes. And within the classical categories, there aren't a huge amount of submissions compared to pop categories. So you need fewer votes in order to be nominated in classical categories. And so when you think about an orchestra, once an orchestra has been nominated, they can actually maintain that membership. And then you have 90 votes right there because you have the entire orchestra as membership because they got that nomination. So when you see orchestras that get multiple nominations, it's because they have that momentum. And that is definitely a thing. Once you get nominated once, there is definitely a momentum that you try to maintain towards further momentums because you already have these circles and you're already part of this elite group. So the more
So
people you can, yeah.
would that include, so like obviously like the players and things, but would that include like the artistic director, like the more like behind the scenes people of the orchestra as well?
Um, Not if they're not voting members. So often the artistic director, the executive director, they'll be professional members, so they won't have that voting power.
Got
Um, Sometimes a workaround for that is they add themselves as producers on an album. And so then they would have a nomination and therefore be a voting member if they can get a producer credit on an album.
But then they couldn't be a
The opera
professional
shadow,
member.
if they've been nominated for a Grammy as a producer, then they could.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so the opera category is actually really weird. So an opera is nominated for an album, but the composer and librettist are not nominees. So often what happens is the composer adds themselves onto the nomination docket as an executive producer on the album because even though the composer and librettist are not nominated, the conductor, the lead soloist, and the producers are nominees. So
Do you know why that is?
I don't know. It makes that job really hard because let's say I'm writing someone's bio. One of our a composer that I've worked with for about 7 years now, Mary Kim Jian. She was just her opera Adoration was nominated with Alan Pearson as the conductor for Best Opera. She was nominated as a producer, even though she wrote the album. And so when you're writing their bio, she's a Grammy nominated composer, but not as a composer.
You know, I feel like that rule might be because I guess the Grammy is still stuck when they started, when they were with Verdi and with Puccini, and they're gonna nominate Mozart and Puccini and Verdi. I guess, I don't know. I mean, that might be the reasoning why behind, I don't know.
It's really complicated and upsetting to a lot of
Yeah.
composers. You know, Huang Ro and David Henry Huang, they should have been nominated because they wrote the thing. But that's just how the category is structured. Certain categories, just the composer is nominated. Some categories, it's the percentage that you are featured on an album. So you're only nominated if you appear on more than 50% of the tracks on an album. Will Liverman's latest nomination, it was him as a composer. He wrote all of the music on Dunbar Morris sessions, and each track featured a superstar singer along with Will, but they were not nominated along with him because none of them were featured on more than 50%.
That's very weird.
But you couldn't like mention them and if you were writing their bio, you couldn't mention them at all.
They were featured on the Grammy nominated project.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You had to look through the rule book on every single on every single category has different rules, and then certain people are nominees, certain people get a certificate, and then certain people get actual statuette. I believe that like all of the singers featured on Will's, like if he were I think that they will get certificates. But if he had won, they wouldn't receive the actual statuette.
So Will would take the statue.
Yes.
Okay.
Will would take the statuette, and I think a producer as well. But none of the others because they weren't featured on more than 50% of the album. Yeah, but I would say best opera recording is the weirdest. In that the composer and librettist are not nominated along. So they are the composer of a Grammy nominated opera. If they did not nominate themselves, like as a loophole, as an executive producer.
So that's a good lesson for all those composers that are for next year as well, that they better get themselves as executive or producers that they can be nominated.
Yeah, exactly.
Extremely confusing. I feel like there needs to be a flow chart. Like, okay, if you can't be nominated here, you can here. Like, parroting and everything. That's crazy.
Yeah, we recently had a situation where an ensemble had been nominated. They were saying they were nominated 9 times, but then the Recording Academy, there's someone that fact checks. There's like one classical person that you can write to if you have a question about all this. But she said actually the ensemble has been nominated 7 times, and the group as individuals are the additional 2 times. So we couldn't say 9-time nominee. We had to say 7-time nominated ensemble with the members being nominated 2 additional times. So that's a lot of a publicist's job, is like getting us wording right. Yeah.
So obviously, once Grammy nominations are out, what is the most challenging part once the Grammy nominations are out? And like what does the campaigning look like? Because I feel like a lot of the campaigning goes mostly towards the nomination, and then things kind of like level out. I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, so once you have achieved a nomination, that's awesome. You can update your bio. And typically the labels then also step in with additional support because the pool, so let's say you have 150 on the opening ballot, the first round ballot. Now you're down to 5. So most of the categories within classical have 5 nominees. Sometimes the opera category has not had enough submissions in the first round to warrant 5 nominations. When David Too Little was nominated for Black Lodge in 2024, the award ceremony in 2024, I believe that there were only 3 because it had too few submissions in the overall. And so once you are a nominee, you're down to a handful at most. And then the label usually steps in with additional advocacy and campaigning on your behalf to the rest of the community. But really, you just start the whole process over again. You reach out to those same circles, but you have more opportunity because let's say in the first round, the other people have an album in that same category. And so now you have their vote as well. Whereas in the first round, they were likely voting for themselves. And so you just do it all again and you hope for the best. It's another 2 to 3 week voting window. And then you attend the awards and you try not to have your hopes up. And then you find out like in the ceremony itself. In case people don't know, the classical awards are part of the premiere ceremony that starts at 12:30 Pacific, 3:30 Eastern, and it's only live streamed online. It is not part of the televised awards, and they go through about 80 to 90 categories in 2 hours and just, like, crank out all of the categories, in this live stream, and then, the classical awards are over, you won or you didn't, and then you go to, like, the Lady Gaga, Taylor Swift,
Concert.
and you just enjoy it. If you're a nominee, you get really great seats. And it's over and you get to take a deep breath and hopefully enjoy it with your fellow nominees and winners and your community. So yeah, I mean, the other great thing about the premiere ceremony is it's general admission. So everyone like sits together, they cheer for each other. It's really exciting and like a great energy. Because all the
That honestly sounds more fun than like
Yeah.
going to this big event and like concerts and having to wait for your category. Like you can get that out of the way and then just have a big party after.
Yeah.
Well, the waiting I feel is the challenge because, like you said, and I watched the premiere ceremony this year. I watch it every year because I'm always waiting for the classical, the opera, and whatever. And I'm like, okay, when is it gonna get to the opera? And they always leave classical music like literally till the end.
Yes. Yeah, they do. It's usually last. So it's kind of nice. I mean, I usually tell my people the red carpet opens at 11:30 in the morning, and so they don't have to get there like right at the beginning. They can just kind of like get there in a more relaxed manner. It's GA, like I said, so you can just go and do the red carpet. Hopefully, get some celeb spotting in, get your photographs. Ideally, speak to a few journalists, get your outfit seen, and then you sit down and you're just like with your peers, and you get to enjoy that together. And then like we said, it's over. Yeah, but not this year, but last year, the host was Wayne Brady, and our nominees saw him at the medal ceremony, which happens the day before. All the nominees get to go to a medal ceremony, and they get like a pretty Tiffany medal. And he was like, "I've been practicing all the classical names like Wayne Brady." So he's really pumped to announce the classical rights.
I mean,
So on the red carpet, on the red carpet, you said like maybe they're talking to journalists and things. Do you see like specifically like classical focused people there or not so much?
Not so much, unfortunately. I usually tell people to have pretty low expectations in terms of the press, that want to have that have the awareness of the classical categories to really get into in-depth interview. But often there are like specialty press, like Spanish language press for a composer from Spain, or Canadian press for nominees from Canada, or LGBTQ outlets, or Black interest outlets, or different places. So usually it would be me. This year, I have a young baby, so I didn't attend this year. But usually it would be me. And so people have a printout or like an index card of all of the top talking points about them, like fifth nomination, first Armenian, these aren't related, but like first Armenian composer nominated in Best Opera. Like, and so actually Mary Kiumjian did a great job. She had like a flyer printout because she knows someone that has been one on the media side of the red carpet a lot, and she had this glorious like one page, and she had printouts for everyone, and you hand them down the line, and then people will interview you accordingly. Like she's from California, so people like California news would want to talk to her, like California Pride. And if you don't have a publicist there with you, there are media liaisons at the top. There's also sign language translators that you can use to go along with you through all the media positions. And then there's like the official Grammy stop, which is a video interview, which did a lot of the classical interviews. So there's about 60 different outlets set along the side, the right side of the carpet, and you speak to as many as will speak to you, and it's just like really busy and really loud, and like maybe Taylor Swift shows up and they all like want to interview her instead, and but she probably won't take many of the enemy, so it's just like very chaotic, and you're trying to get in there and then find. This year I was watching the bird's eye view, and I could see people texting me like from oh my god, where's the video liaison? Like, because they have like different angles of the red carpet that you can watch.
So you
Yeah,
weren't there, but you were still like running a show.
Yeah.
no, I totally understand the whole red carpet thing. I was on a red carpet in November, and I wasn't as press. I was actually there as a guest, and I was there, and it was a not as big as a Grammy or an Oscar red carpet, and I just remember, like, we were all trying to get, an interview in, an interview it's you everyone's fighting to get and the pictures and the this and the that. It's chaotic. Everyone looks at the glamorous part of the red carpet, and I'm like, "There's nothing glamorous about this."
Yeah. Yeah, last year I walked 10 nominees down the red carpet. So the nominees can only go once.
Mhm.
But the media liaisons can just like circle it over and over and over. And I probably did it more than 10 times because I was celeb spotting too.
Uh,
Uh,
I wanna know what is it of this.
yeah, I saw Sabrina Carpenter and Billie Eilish and Taylor Swift. I was teaching a class at UNC Asheville, and this boy raised his hand. He's like, "Could you smell her?" Like about Taylor Swift. I'm like, that's so gross.
Well, no, there's like reports of her like smelling really good. Could you still? I guess
I just thought it was creepy. I saw John Legend and Chrissy Teigen. Um, yeah, there's just so many, like Lenny Kravitz. They all just go like at certain periods of time with varying levels of security. So you couldn't get close to Taylor Swift to smell.
I have a feeling, Afton, we're gonna have to try to get you to the Grammys so you can go and enjoy the celebrity spotting.
Yeah, the say celebrity smell. Yeah. Yeah, that would be so
that
cool.
would
I
be
so we know lay of the land. I don't know how it works for media applying to be on the carpet. There's also like a virtual media. There's a virtual media spot
Mhm.
where you can tune in virtually and like ask questions. I'm not sure how that works, but for publicists, there's an application that opens just after the nominations are announced, and you apply and you say how many nominees you have, and then they accept a certain amount of publicists. Um so I've been lucky to get that media access the last 3 um awards, which is really nice.
Any memorable moments that you have encountered at the Grammys, and I mean, and what do you love about the energy in the room besides, going and obviously being with your nominees?
Yeah. Well, each has been so different. The first experience was so amazing. I didn't get to go on the red carpet that time, but I can clearly remember Samara Joy was the performer
Okay.
in the premiere ceremony, and the after party was like Flo Rida and oh my gosh, who wears the clock? Um
I don't know.
Flava Flav. So it was like this elder millennials like dream. concert. So after the Grammy televised ceremony is over, there's an after party, which is usually pretty crazy. Um, Last year was quite somber because the fires had just happened, so there were no after party, no like celebratory elements. Proceeds all went to the LA Fire Department.
Mhm.
So that was really special and moving. Um, I would say Karen Slack's win, I was sitting right behind her, was particularly exciting because, she'd never released an album before. And it was just, she was one of the first artists that we signed to Primo Artists PR roster in 2022. Um, and she's just so deserving of it. It was all Florence Price songs, world premiere recordings, and then they're making those they're publishing all of those arrangements of Price songs as well. So it was just really, really special to see her win and unexpected for someone's first nomination. Um Yeah, they're all really special. The year before that, after the after party, I was out till 3 in the morning with Jesse Montgomery, Anthony McGill, and, Carlos Rodriguez from the Catalyst Quartet. Like, it was just, like, I work remotely,
Right.
so I'm not usually in person getting to celebrate with my artists, so it's really special. One year,
Have you met any of your artists at the Grammys, like, for the first time?
Jessie Montgomery was not a client at the time, so that was the first time I'd met her in person, and now she's a client. Um, I can't think if it was the first time, but probably. It was probably the first time that I
The
met.
Grammys is kinda like your, like, team meeting.
Yeah.
So to Kareem,
The night
he's a
before
person.
the night before the Grammys, usually New Music USA does a classical party. So that's kind of like a who's who in classical music the night before the Grammys. That's like the main classical party. And that's a really great place to meet people in person as well. Um, two cycles ago, it was like monsooning rain and like everyone's in their like finest, and it was just bucketing to the point where we all got emergency alerts on our phone like in the ceremony because it was raining. My flight was delayed the next day because it was just like this crazy monsoon, and so I was holding the coats and umbrellas and everything. I was like the groupie because no one wanted their coats and umbrellas and everything in there. Red carpet photos, and we were all just trying to stay dry. So it's always been like really exciting. And it's nice to like have their backs on this moment. A lot of times we're very nervous, very anxious because that's usually the red carpets before they know if they've won or not. They've got their speech. We help them prepare that as well. Help them decide like who to thank and how long it needs to be and understand that format. Um, and if they win, they get shuttled to like an additional winners media room
Mhm.
As well. So making sure they know what to do there as well. Yeah.
So any
Sorry. Do you have any, like, hopes for classical music representation in the Grammys moving forward?
Hmm. Well, it was really exciting. While my two nominees didn't get nominated in Best Opera this year, it also was Houston Grand Opera who won. And the Met usually wins just because if you think about like how many artists are involved with the Met and how much they record, it's usually like if you're up if you're nominated in Best Opera, you're like, oh man, I'm because the Met usually wins. But this year it was exciting to see another opera company win. We represent James Gaffigan, who's going to be the new music director of HGO. So that was really exciting, and hopefully we can work on some albums with HGO in the future. Um, it's crazy that there's still firsts at the Grammys, first time in best solo vocal that the work of a black composer, an entire album of a black composer was won the category. It's just crazy that it's first. It would be nice if living composers of opera could get some additional recommendation within.
And librettists.
Yeah, exactly. Without having to like do that workaround, that would be really nice. And a publicist could dream that more classical media are represented on the red carpet as well, so that our artists have more to do on the red carpet other than like the handful. Yeah, because usually they're like, "Who are you? Classical? No thanks." So that would be
I
really
mean, it
exciting.
does sound encouraging though, because like you're saying, it's always at the end. The nominations are at the bottom of the page, at the like it's streamed, not live TV and all of that. And so it feels like it's kind of like pushed to the side, but like from your description, it sounds like it's still pretty like a big deal and really like a fun time and everything. So that is encouraging.
Yeah, and what it does for the artist, in terms of their career, I think is really special. It's unmatched once you have that. I joke about, like, updating the bio, but, like, you know, once you have that accolade, the nomination or a win, it just does tremendous things for an artist's career, for their bookings, for future recording potential. I mean, it's really hard and very expensive to record an album. It's not like you get an advance from a record label to record an album anymore. Artists are spending upwards of five, six, $7,000 in order to record and release an album, often self-funded if they don't have any support. And then you pay the publicist, and then you like, and then it's expensive to go to the Grammys. You have to pay for your flight, you have to pay for your hotel,
Your dress, so
your outfit, your makeup, your limo, your plus one can be upwards of $1,000. Like,
Yeah.
so it's a lot to invest in recording. And streaming numbers, like you're not gonna get rich on your like 0.0002 or book or stream on Spotify or physical CD sales. There's not like physical record stores. So it's a lot of effort and a lot of expense to even put yourself in the for consideration. So yeah.
but it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I've always said the Grammy stage should be for all music, and I think one of the most interesting things is like the premiere ceremony is great, but I would love to see classical music also represented on the main stage as well. And it seems like, like every single award ceremony, seems like rules have to be changed a little bit to follow.
Yeah. Yeah, they do change the rules slightly every year. And so it's possible to advocate for further change and then even as classical music has evolved, like to sound different than it has ever before, there's committees that are involved with determining categories. So the label submits you in certain categories, and then there are further committees that say like, just because this doesn't sound exactly like classical music has always sounded, like we approve it to be in this category. We determine that it fits that definition. So it'll just hopefully continue to yeah, and they're adding new categories as well. Um so
For sure. For sure. Well, thank you so much, Katie. This has been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Afton, for joining me as well. Hope to see you on another episode. And like always, thank you so much for listening to us. And you can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Threads, and also listen to us on where you find your podcasts. And we'll see you at the opera.